Oh. The next one is talks. We're gonna have talks. Another placid summer day was drifting by. Your daydreams were chasing each other, none sticking around long enough to become a firm plan. But you didn't really mind that right now. A distant sound drew your thoughts away, and you realized it was the front door knocking, or rather, someone knocking on it. You descended the stairs casually to check the door, finding Cove standing outside.
Hey.
Hi. Cove's voice came out quietly, with a strangely pleased smile on his face. Hi. Cove opened his mouth to respond, only to have your phone vibrating cut him off. It took you off guard as well. Both your eyes tracked down to where it was resting, and then you exchanged a look. It's okay, you can answer. I'll wait. You nodded and rushed to dig out the phone. You smiled when you saw who it was actually calling you. It's Miranda.
Cool.
Oh, cool. Can I say hi too? With a nod, you accepted this call and set it to speaker. Hi, Miranda. Hi. There was something off about her tone. Cove met your gaze, and you saw the same confusion in his expression.
Have you heard from Terry?
Have you heard from Terry at all, or did you hear about her from Cove? Huh? No, she hasn't called me, but Cove is with me right now. Hey. Oh, hi, Cove. Is that what you were going to say? He shook his head no, before realizing that it wasn't a good enough answer when one person couldn't actually see it. No, Terry hasn't called me today either. Is something wrong? At that, Miranda couldn't hold herself together any longer. The muffled sobs from the other side of the line were unmistakable. Terry doesn't like me anymore, if she ever did. What? That doesn't sound right. You're probably her best friend out of all of us. Yeah, why do you think that? She sniffled, and there was a pause as you could hear her shift the phone to her other hand. Terry was here the other night watching movies with me. We were up super late. She realized her parents probably went to bed, so they couldn't pick her up. My mom and dad were definitely asleep then. Dad works early. I tried telling her it was okay to just spend the night and she could text her parents what happened, but Terry didn't really want to. You glanced at Cove. He looked equally unsure as you about where the story was going. It didn't sound like a friendship's ending situation. I suggested things to make it easier if she was nervous, like she could sleep by herself in my room while I stayed somewhere else. Yeah. And I said we didn't have to sleep at all. We could have kept watching movies until one of our parents woke up. I wouldn't have minded. I know not everyone can do sleepovers, but Terry wouldn't even tell me what was really wrong or what I could do to help. I thought we could tell each other anything. I guess I was wrong. Did she stay in the end? No. We got too loud in the kitchen and my dad woke up. He offered to drive her home when he heard what was wrong. She texted me apologizing for my dad having to do that when he needed rest, but that was it. She isn't talking to me anymore. You could hear every bit of the tears and heartbreak in Miranda's voice. This continued to be a shock for your neighbor, but Cove recovered and spoke gently. I'm really sorry.
I mean...
There's no way Terry wanted to make you feel this bad, or that she's just done with your friendship because of this. Miranda's sniffing continued. You hoped she'd had plenty of tissues handy. It'll be okay, I hope Terry is alright. It's really weird that she reacted like that. It's not a big deal, honestly. You weren't sure what to say. The thoughts in your head were spinning. This wasn't like Terry, at least not that you'd seen. Your guts churned as you wondered who to worry about more. Miranda's voice sounded a little bit more collected after finishing her story, but you knew that the crying was far from being done. I thought she'd have reached out to one of you by now. Maybe she's not talking to anyone. Yeah. Sorry for bothering you and Cove about this. You're not bothering us. Right, you can tell us things. Thank you. Her shaking voice finally conveyed a little optimism, or at least relief that she wasn't dealing with it entirely on her own. If you do hear from her or anything, could you let me know if she's alright? We can. Thanks. Let's talk later, okay? Bye. 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 That didn't really seem like an especially productive point to end the call. Though you also weren't sure where to go from there. Looking to Cove, his face seemed as lost as yours. With no alternative, you hung up and put your phone back in your pocket. Cove crossed his arms, a frown creasing his face. He began to pace back and forth along your porch, clearly trying to put the pieces together in his head in a way that made sense. You were worried. You felt pretty confident about this working out well. It sounded like trouble to you. You weren't sure how to react. You were worried. Biting the inside of the cheek, you stared at the ground. Hearing Miranda so distraught like that was not easy. And what about Terry? That uncertainty was tearing you up. The empty state of your head before learning this was not helping you now. You couldn't put two thoughts together and found yourself just staring into space. We should probably try calling Terry. Cove's voice managed to drag you back to some grounding. He'd stopped pacing, but you still saw a perturbed look on his face. Yeah, I'm worried about her too. You stood beside him, ready to act on whatever plan you two could come up with. Cove started with the easiest thing. He pulled out his phone and called Terry. Cove let it ring and ring and ring and ring. Terry didn't answer. There wasn't even an option to leave a voice message. Your shoulders slumped and Cove looked even more troubled, if that was possible. He turned to you as if for some lifeline. Could you try calling? I'm just gonna send a text, just like, hey, I was trying to reach you, call me or something. Yeah. You took up your phone once more. Unfortunately, after another set of interminable rings, the line went dead. No answer, no voicemail. Hanging up, you saw Cove visibly deflate. He rubbed his arm, eyes distant, openly struggling with the whole affair. I don't like this at all. They're fighting, we barely know anything, and we're supposed to just wait and see? Despite it only being a minute since he texted Terry, Cove checked his phone again. He was desperate for progress, for something, and he frowned as you watched him. You need to try to relax. You're making me anxious. There's no way Terry has answered you. They're gonna get over it. You stayed silent. There was nothing you could think of to say. All you could do now was hope that Terry was alright. It was up to her to reach back out now. Glancing at your own phone in vain, you considered sending a text message too, if that would help. This made you feel all twisted up. You could see the same sort of discomfort on Cove's face. There was something consoling in that, at least. Words drifted from his mouth like a feeble breeze. It'll be fine. It's gonna be okay. Yeah. You could hear it in both of your voices how much you wanted to give and receive reassurance. You tried to believe the sentiments, weak as they were. Should we... What do we even say if we hear from one of them? His pacing resumed as he attempted to answer his own question, but it was written all over his face that he had no idea how to tackle any of this. He slowly came to another halt, like a gear winding down. We should find out Terry's side of the story. We should just comfort Miranda and let up with Terry. I don't know. We should only tell them to work it out between themselves. You wondered why you always had to come up with things. You didn't say anything. Cove lowered his gaze. You realized just then how much he had been counting on you to come up with a reply. His back was rigid as stone. That heaviness weighed on you, dragging your heart down with it. Is something wrong? Do you have a problem with me? You rolled your eyes. Heavy-hearted, you said nothing about it. The lump grew as your vision blurred with tears. You twisted away from Cove, not wanting to let him see you crying at such a time. It seemed like your efforts were wasted since he continued to look away from you. For several minutes, you both remained there in silence, drowning in your thoughts. Eventually, Cove turned around. I'm gonna text Terry that we already know what's going on. Maybe she'll have an easier time talking to us because she won't have to pretend or explain. Yeah, that might be the only way to get her attention. You can't do that. Miranda didn't say it was alright to admit she talked to us. You felt way too overwhelmed to know what to say next. I think you're pushing too much. That's not a good idea. Why are you so fixated? You felt way too overwhelmed. Upset, your voice got caught in your throat as your thoughts were pulled in too many directions. Cove took your silence as a go-ahead. Cove's fingers worked furiously yet carefully. He was giving his full attention to his words. You sidled up next to him and looked, trying to watch what he was writing. Cove rapidly typed out, Hey, Risa and I really want to talk to you. Miranda told us what happened. Please reply back. And sent. It was done. We'll just have to see what happens now. Quietly, you felt very nervous. I wish you weren't so concerned with everyone else's feelings but mine. You're always concerned about everyone else. You're never concerned about me. It'll definitely be fine, right? I really hope she gets back to us soon. Why couldn't you have just left it alone? Great, can we do something else now? You're being dramatic. Quietly, you felt very nervous. You wondered how Terry would react. A wave of nausea hit you like a ton of bricks. Finally, it seemed to dawn on him what his words had been doing to you. All the anger and frustration crumbled away, leaving a look of contrition in its place. He put his phone away. He made an effort to smile, but it was meager and did nothing to conceal the sadness in his eyes.
Sorry.
I'm really sorry, Risa. I never know what to do with this kind of thing. Maybe we should just forget about it. You smiled just a little bit. Finally, that sounds good to me. I'd like to be alone for a while. Could you leave? You simply nodded back. There was a part of you that worried it wouldn't be long before Cove pulled his phone out again, but you were relieved that he had put it away. The last thing you wanted was to fight with him, especially over this. Taking a deep breath in and out, you were thankful for progress of some sorts. An awkward silence grew between you both, then you turned and pointed at your door. We don't have to stand around here. We can go inside. Cove's eyes lit up like he'd been wanting for you to say that. Together, you headed inside. Hey, Risa, and hi there, Cove. Ma followed right after, hearing the greeting her wife had just given. Mom's face twisted with concern when she saw your expressions. What's with the long faces? Are you both okay? You tried to nod, but it was no use. Your voice cracked despite your best effort to not let it get to you more. Miranda and Terry had a big fight, and none of us can get a hold of Terry. Your parents exchanged a meaningful look, though its meaning was lost on you. I'm sorry to hear there's trouble with your friend, sweetie. Is there anything we can do to help? Out of the corner of your eye, you saw Cove rub his arm awkwardly, unable to add anything. No, we're just waiting to see if Terry calls or texts or if Miranda does. Well, we can at least help take your mind off things for while you're waiting. Another great idea, Lani. We can get the whole gang together for some quality time. Mom gave you a soft smile and added, This'll be good, especially since it might help make up for what happened at the farmer's market. Yes, it'll be wonderful. I'll go see what Liz is up to right now. Excited, she fluttered a few steps away and then stopped. She pivoted on her heels and raised a single finger, flashing a big smile at Cove. And of course, Cliff will be welcome too. Knowing your family was always there for you, that couldn't be underestimated. In fact, it meant everything to you that your moms cared so much. Thank you. Yeah, thanks. That's nice of you.
You're welcome.
You're both very welcome. Don't sweat it, not so, kiddos. Leave things to us. Just relax and we'll call you when it's all together. You nodded and your moms dispersed for now, springing into action for their impromptu get-together. Turning to Cove, you motioned with your hand for him to follow. If you were going to wait, might as well be in your room. Let's go upstairs. Sure. You flopped down on your bed, feeling like you could sink into it and disappear. Cove, meanwhile, took a spot on a chair off to the side. You sighed at the same time, and Cove's mouth pulled into a bent smile at that. He gave his phone another quick check, and his eyebrows furrowed. Still nothing? Yep, this is crap, huh? Yep. Cove chewed the inside of his cheek as if to mimic the stress that was clearly eating away at him. Cove, what's wrong? What's really wrong? One disagreement doesn't make you act like this. That got a pointed pause in his movement. Cove was carefully trying to put his thoughts together. He spoke in a fragile voice. When people you care about, when they're unhappy with each other, there's nothing you can do. At least, when you're in a fight yourself, you have some responsibility, some control over it all. Ah, their fight is reminding him of his parents. I wish it didn't have to happen, but that isn't possible, so... Oh well, I guess. His attempt at giving a nonchalant shrug after that was pitiable. Yeah, it makes me feel horrible too. True, but you're right that it can't be helped. It's whatever, other people can do what they want. You stayed silent. With nothing else to do, your eyes stared down at your hands, resting in your lap, but then your mouth opened. There was a question you had to ask. Have you had to deal with people fighting a lot? Cove couldn't meet your eye. A ghost of a smile crossed his lips, but it was gone almost before you could see it. His eyes grew very far away. Yeah, with my parents. You know, before they split up and everything. Despite knowing him for so many years, Cove had never spoken of the years before he moved to Sunset Bird, before his parents separated in any detail. He whispered his thoughts distantly, almost unconcerned with whether you could hear them or not. They used to fight all the time. I think they got along when I was a baby. I mean, they had to have wanted to be with each other at some point. But when I was old enough to remember anything, it was already bad. There was always something wrong, and I could never help. I just wanted them to be happy. You tried to imagine your moms breaking up, and the very idea scared you, but Cove had endured that for real. I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it.
It's okay. Despite that revelation, Cove gazed reassuringly at you. It's not like that anymore. Things are so different now I don't even really think about it. Again, the sorrow reasserted itself. When he continued, you could barely hear him. Though I guess it's pretty obvious I haven't forgotten either. You tried to smile for him. You went over and placed a hand on his shoulder. You tried to smile. Today clearly didn't go the way either of you wanted, but you had each other. Cove's body relaxed in front of you, and his expression told you that he felt the same way. Today was a lot, huh? Yeah, it was. You sat there with a rare sense of camaraderie towards Cove. After everything today, you felt a sense of relief. And for a while, you stayed like that. A comfortable quiet fell between you, and the sun fell with it. The warming calm ended when Cove gasped sharply. You spun, half expecting to find him nursing an injury, but instead found him staring straight ahead. What?
Oh my god.
I think my phone just vibrated. Do you want to check? Yeah. He patted his pockets, fumbling in his panic, and yanked the phone out. The force of the action nearly catapulted the device out of his grip entirely, but he caught it just in time. His eyes honed in on the screen. It's Terry. Thank God. She says she's sorry. He looked back at you, eyes wide as his nerves started to fray once more. What should I say? I don't know. Give it a second. I need to think. Tell her to call us. Ask her what's going on. Ask if she's talked to Miranda. He clammed up. Okay. He nodded and began typing. Cove was aware that his blunt words could sometimes make others bristle, even though he never meant to hurt them. Cove's phone buzzed nearly as soon as the message was sent. It's Terry again. She's talking to us. She asked about what Miranda said, but wait, you leaned in, watching the conversation unfold on Cove's screen. She's gonna actually call. Cove held his breath as he waited. His circle of friends had always been small, so he'd managed to avoid the stress of seeing friends fighting. You suspected he was feeling this even more keenly because this was so uncommon and the friends so important to him. His phone rang out. Cove jammed the answer button. He switched the phone into speaker mode, allowing you to participate in the conversation. But despite his immediate reaction, his voice lacked the same resolve when he spoke. Hey. It was tentative, a white flag fluttering in the wind. Risa's here too. Hi. Hey, buddies. Terry's voice was barely recognizable without her usual quick patter and energy. Are things okay? I don't know. Probably not. Cove tensed, his free hand coiling into an anxious fist. What happened? Don't you know already? Miranda explained some of it, but it doesn't make sense to us. You heard Terry sigh over the phone as she unburdened herself. Pretty much. I was at Randy's house. We decided to watch some movies she super liked that I'd never seen before. Turns out there's a lot of those. We watched one, then another, and another. We were having so much fun. Each time one finished, she had another one to share with me. I didn't really think about the time. I only wanted to say yes to Randy and watch her movies. She spoke wistfully, but her words were full of affection. It was Randy, you know. I wasn't thinking about my schedule or what time it was. Yeah. Then I finally saw the time and, oh no, it was way too late. I already knew I couldn't stay. She took a deep breath, her voice becoming softer when she resumed talking. I was so stressed out. I couldn't deal with it. Miranda wanted to help. She kept coming up with ways to make it better and trying to figure out why I was so upset and stuff. I was trying to answer her questions, and there were so many. But I couldn't really answer all of them. I didn't know why some of her ideas didn't work with me. It made my head ache. I still had the first problem, and Randy there trying to help, blasting all these questions and suggestions at me faster than I could even think. She gulped audibly, sniffing. I got frustrated and told her to just leave me alone. But then she wanted to talk about why I wanted that, and we started having a fight in the kitchen. It woke Randy's dad. We told him about how I wanted to go home, but my parents couldn't get me, so Mr. Eckert offered to do it. Oh. I accepted because I definitely couldn't stay then. Not after throwing a racket and turning it into a big deal. But I feel awful and embarrassed. Why did I yell at Randy and hurt her feelings? And I made her dad lose sleep by waking him up and having to drive me home. What do you say after that? I have no idea. I don't know where to start, and I don't want to make it worse by saying the wrong thing and fighting again. So, I'm not talking. Terry, Randy isn't mad that you didn't want to stay or that you fought. She just wants to feel like you can talk to her. I mean, you can say whatever you want, she'll listen. Not talking to her at all is pretty much the only wrong way to go about it. He looked at Cove, hunched over the phone, staring pensively into it, and searching for a solution. This couldn't be solved with the other key party missing. But what if you brought them in? Your phone was still free. You suggested calling up Miranda now. I could call Miranda. You could talk to her with us. Cove brightened up, the concerned furrow in his brow, which had taken root when Miranda first called, eased. That could work. Terry, are you up for it? She made a noise that wasn't a word, but nevertheless conveyed her hesitation and worry. But she brought it to a close with a decisive exhalation, as if pushing all negative thoughts from her body. All right, I'll do it. Cove nodded. Now that you'd received approval from everyone, you pulled out your phone and called Miranda. You set it to speaker and waited for her to pick up. Luckily, she did.
Hi.
Hi, Risa. Her voice was still distant, as if her thoughts were elsewhere, but it was loud enough for your needs. Hi, you're on speaker. Terry is on speaker too on Cove's phone. Oh. She paused while she digested this information. You watched the phone screen, hoping that she wouldn't hang up as a result. Oh, really? Yep, it's really me. Can you hear my voice all the way from your house to theirs and then mine? I can. You and Cove exchanged looks, waiting for the wall between them to break and wondering who would be the one to do it. As the quiet dragged on, you caught Cove chewing his cheek. He must have weighed the same question as you, whether to encourage the conversation along, or leave Miranda and Terry to resolve it themselves. The answer came in the form of one sniff, followed by another from Cove's phone.
Sorry.
Sorry, Randy. I hope you still like me. What? You were the one acting as if you didn't like me. Her tone was defensive, no doubt a result of her wounds from last night still being raw.
What?
No way! Everyone likes Randy. You're wonderful. Your eyes met Cove's. His phone was tilted towards you, capturing the call indirectly. You moved your phone closer to his, hoping that the signal was strong enough to convey every nuance of tone. Cove did likewise, bringing his cell right next to yours, even bumping against it as he shifted his grip. I didn't know what to say. That's the only reason I wouldn't talk to you. If I had known the answer, I'd have told you right away. Miranda murmured on the other end of the line. You didn't want to stay. Anything I tried to do bothered you, and you could have told me you didn't know. Yeah, I think I was angry at myself. I did a dumb thing and I didn't want help with it. I wanted to be mad and just deal with it myself. It made me keep doing dumb things. Oh. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet, as tender and vulnerable as the words.
I'm sorry.
Staying up late watching stuff was all my fault. I had to find a way to fix it. That's what I thought anyway, but I should have given you space. I'm sorry for being so pushy and insensitive. Hardly. Miranda Eckhart having a flaw? I've never heard of such a crazy thing. Miranda let out a ghost of a giggle. Cove cleared his throat. Maybe you should call each other now? Sorry.
Sure.
Can do. Thanks for giving me the kick in the butt to do this already. Randy, Mandy, I'm gonna call you right now. Bye, Risa and Cove. She hung up after squeezing in another quick bye, though not giving you or Cove room to respond in kind. Miranda laughed, the noise tinkling gently like wild chimes in a summer breeze. Thank you for listening and helping. I'm gonna hang up now so I can answer Terry's call. Bye. 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 Ugh. Miranda hung up, still chuckling softly as your call ended. The room felt emptier without the other voices in it. Cove expelled a sigh that crashed through the newly fallen silence. He dropped his arms to his sides, letting his head hanging down like a puppet at rest. Thank God. They shouldn't have involved us in that. I'm so relieved it's okay. You were simply happy your friends had made up. The day's events had drained you. You were content now that Cove seemed at ease again. You're simply happy your friends had made up. Cove scratched at his face, his expression cloudy. I think I need to find better ways for dealing with conflict because that was awful. We could all probably do better at that. I think you did okay given the circumstances. Yeah, I think that would help. You didn't comment. Cove meekly smiled as he rubbed his eyes, weariness creeping over him, and mumbled his next words. We can talk about it another day. Conflict resolution methods? Huh? Oh no, forget it. Your eyebrows rose, and then a light bulb went off in your head. Before Miranda called, didn't you say there was something you wanted to say? Cove's original visit had been thrown so off kilter that it was a struggle to wind your memory back to when he'd first turned up. Now you did, though. You remembered that he had been perky when he'd arrived this afternoon. Was it good news? Cove brushed his hands against his now folded arms shyly. Well, yeah, maybe. I'm not exactly sure it counts as news or even good. It's just... is what it is. I'm happy about it, though. You were never going to be one to push someone else to talk when they seemed reticent. It's okay, but it sounds good. Cove flushed, drawing his arms closer to his body. Oh, what is this about that he's blushing? I actually wanted to let your family know as a whole. Mostly your parents. It might be a little weird for it to be only us talking about it, but after everything that's happened, I guess I can. I'll bring it up to your moms another time. You watched him, wondering what he had to say that could be less awkward to talk about with the parents of your neighbor than the person who's your own age. But then again, your moms had always been fonder of Cove than you were. He shifted his feet, as if a different posture might give him the support he needed for the conversation. I didn't want to make it a big deal, but I I just know what my sexuality is now. Oh, okay. We're there, aren't we? Oh! His announcement caught you by surprise. Cove noticed your obvious confusion and held up a hand. A real subject change, huh? Yeah, this is why it was gonna be a more general thing. His eyes cast off to the side. Your moms are cool. Growing up with them around made it easier, more comfortable for me to think about that kind of thing. I didn't have to put it all together on my own, because they were there, showing me that relationships weren't a set gender deal. And it made me feel like it's okay to talk about topics like this with your family. Cove drew a breath, straightening up. I'm demisexual, so, most of the time I don't really have those kinds of feelings. Physical wants and stuff. Aw, cool. It's only in some situations when I'm already really emotionally and romantically connected to someone that I start to ever think about anything sexual, and it's only with them. I hadn't heard the term until pretty recently, and it just made a lot of sense once I knew what it meant. I had a word that fit how I felt.
Yeah.
And I'm pan-romantic. Yo, bro, same! Because I never had a preference for a specific gender or anything, so yeah. You nodded as he spoke, completely understanding how he'd come to that conclusion. Cove looked down at the floor, being so open and direct about a matter that personal, which you were sure he'd spent a long time trying to figure out. Seemed to be kind of weird for him. Despite that, there was a small, proud smile on his face, and when he looked up again, his gaze was steadfast. All this talk of Cove's sexuality made you reflect about your own. Oh no! Do I have to choose my character? You had physical attraction in a general way. You only seemed to feel physical attractions in specific cases. You didn't really have a physical interest in other people. You didn't think that you could tell if you had an interest in people physically. I'm gonna say this one for now. Oh, romantic, no. Social anxiety. You had a romantic attraction in a general way. You only seemed to feel romantic attraction in specific cases and situations. You didn't really have a romantic interest. You didn't think you could tell if you had an interest in people romantically. I'm just gonna go with this, because she has no fucking clue. This social anxiety character, who's just nervous and indifferent all the fucking time, has no fucking clue. But specifically, when it came to how you felt towards men, you found them attractive, you thought you'd be happy with a guy someday, found them attractive, but you hadn't thought about being with a guy, you weren't physically interested, but you'd be happy to have a romantic relationship with a guy, you weren't interested in guys, you generally weren't interested in guys, but there were special exceptions. I don't know what to say. Huh. I'm between the middle one and the last one, to be honest. For this character, at least. Generally weren't interested, but there were special exceptions, or you weren't physically interested, but you'd be happy. Fuck it. And how you felt towards women. You thought you'd be happy with a girl, you found them attractive, but you hadn't thought about being with a girl. You weren't physically interested, but you'd be happy to have a romantic relationship. I'm just gonna say both, for the same. Fine. Just, whatever. I'd be happy with anyone. Like, if I'm with anyone ever, I'd be happy, okay? Whatever. It's just whatever. You'd already told Cove your own sexuality in the past. You hadn't told Cove anything about your sexuality. You and Cove hadn't talked about it, but you were open, so you figured he knew. You had reached an understanding a while back and had the confidence to share it freely. Though you hadn't specifically told him, you knew that he would have been supportive. You were glad that Cove was learning more about himself and felt able to be honest with people about who he was. You could tell that Cove felt like it had been an emotionally draining day that had now come to a close, everything wrapped up neatly with a bow on top. You'd had some good talks with your friends and with each other. A lot had been brought out into the light, and you'd come out of it not only knowing each other better, but yourself too. But there was still something that Cove didn't know. Something that had gnawed at you many times over the years. You'd never told Cove about how you'd first met his dad. Do I tell him? And what would be the point after this long? You'd always held it back from him, unsure of how he would take the revelation. His dad seemed to have done the same, as Cove didn't seem to have heard of it from Mr. Holden either. You decided that the secret had hung over you long enough, maybe you'd tell him someday, but not today. You felt it didn't matter anymore, there was no need to rake up old drama. It wasn't as though Mr. Holden had kept you on his payroll to be friends with his son. It was a strange action, probably out of desperation taken years ago. At this point, you thought you might simply keep that entire event in the past where it belonged. You felt some relief at deciding it wasn't your responsibility to keep caring.
Hey.
Hey, we should probably head downstairs soon if your moms are still wanting everyone to get together. Yeah, that's right. With a renewed spring in your step, you led the way out of your room. You got downstairs to find the others already assembled and waiting.
Hi.
Hello. Hey. Good to see you both.
Hey!
Hi. Here we are, trying to corral everyone into a group, but the two of you were already upstairs the whole time. Hey, Dad, we had some stuff to talk about. Yeah. But we made it, so what's the plan? How about cards? There was a murmur of interest from the others. You were keen to play, that was fine with you. You'd play along with the others. You didn't really want to play cards. You'd play along. Most of the group was eager to play, but Mr. Holden was demurring. I think I'll sit this one out. Where's the fun in that? Join in. Yeah. Yes, and I know there are a lot of people, but we can make it work. Mr. Holden shrunk into himself, embarrassed by their attention. Dad, you love playing cards. We do it at our house all the time. Dad? Mr. Holden broke under the combined force of everyone's attention. Cove, you're an adult now. You deserve to know the truth. I used to throw the card games so you could win. I put up a good fight, but I always made sure to lose a lot more rounds than I won. He toyed with the end of his ponytail, clearly distressed at revealing this bit of info. He did have a history of bad surprises, so that may have been why. I know people want to be taken seriously and fake wins don't mean much, but I couldn't help myself. It's so much better when everyone else got the chance to be victorious. Kyra knew and went along with it. Cove laughed in disbelief that this was the thing his dad stressed about hiding, after the other stunts he's pulled over the years. So what? Lots of parents do that. I hadn't guessed it, sure, though. Looking back, it makes sense. That's right. What's the big deal, Cliff? You can finally take the kid gloves off and give them a run for their money. Mr. Holden smiled coyly, his gaze lowering. I'm not sure that's a good idea. And why not? He waved his hands expansively, the movements fluid and vague. It's just, actually, I am something of a card shark. I used to make a lot of fast cash off games. Casual players don't have a shot unless it's a game of pure luck. Cove's jaw hung open, his eyes wide, fixed on his father. Really? There was a touch of amazement, even admiration, nestled among the shock. The other members of the Rose family exchanged looks, ranging from Liz's disbelief to Mom's intrigue to Ma somewhere in the middle between the two. You can't simply make a claim like that and expect us to go along with it. Let's see you back it up, Shark Man. Mr. Holden gave her a crooked smile, his demureness quickly being replaced by the confidence of someone very skilled or very misguided. You sure about that? Definitely. We gotta see this so-called non-casual player in action. Well, I might be able. Though who knows, maybe I've gotten rusty. His coyness continued to rile the gang up, and he was getting a kick out of it now.
Please?
Come on, please.
Alright.
Alright, I can dust off the old tricks. You clapped your hands. Cove beamed at his father while Mom clapped Mr. Holden on the back. Liz darted off to get a deck of cards while the rest of you settled in for the game. Hands were dealt. Mr. Holden wasted no time proving his words true, wiping the floor with all of you. You played several rounds, even switching games, but none of you were a match for him. That was how the alliance came to be forged. The alliance. The rest of you joined forces against Mr. Holden only, just to try increasing the odds of beating him. With your combined efforts, you pulled out a few victories, yet it was still a challenge. He was clearly a professional. If these were his skills now, rusty with disuse, you couldn't even imagine what a deadly opponent he had been in the past. Despite that, you still had fun. Working cooperatively actually fostered a sense of camaraderie with the others. Mr. Holden didn't appear fazed by this strategy. You actually wondered whether the increased challenge made it more interesting for him. You spent the rest of the afternoon together with your family and the Holdens, having fun. It was an interesting evening for sure, with many discoveries for everyone. It was freeing, and yet, simultaneously, you felt more tied together than you had been before.